Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into something that literally shapes the map of India. How in the world does Indian Railways get all the land it needs for its massive projects? It's a really complex process, often pretty controversial. But don't worry, we're going to break it all down step by step.
Just think about it for a second. A new high-speed train or a huge freight corridor has to slice right across the country. It goes through private farms, right through people's property, sometimes even their homes. So how does that even happen legally? How does the government acquire the right to build on land that belongs to someone else? Well, that is the big question, and we're about to get you the answer.
Okay, so before a single surveyor even sets foot on a piece of land, everything is guided by a very specific set of laws. This is not like a simple negotiation where you're buying a house. No, this is a highly structured process, all driven by what's called national interest. And understanding the law here is really the first step to understanding the entire game.
Right, so the first thing you've got to get is that there isn't just one law for this. India has a general land acquisition law from 2013, which is pretty comprehensive and requires things like a social impact assessment. But the railways, they often operate under their own law, the Railways Act of 1989. And the reason for this comes down to one single word: speed. Their process is streamlined, it's designed to fast-track these huge national projects, and that difference is the key to everything that comes next.
So in all of this, who do you actually talk to? Well, there's one key person every landowner needs to know, and they're called the competent authority. Now, what's crucial here is that this is not a railway official. They are a government officer appointed to be a kind of neutral referee. They manage the whole process, they listen to objections, and they figure out the compensation. If your land is involved, this person is your single most important point of contact.
So, once the legal side is set, the whole thing moves from theory to reality. It goes from plans on a piece of paper to boots on the ground. This is where the railway's big idea gets measured out, literally inch by inch, on the actual land that they need.
The process really kicks off with a kind of boring but super important step. The railways deposits money called joint measurement or JM fees. This money is what gets the local revenue officials, the people who are experts on the local land records, to work together with the railway surveyors. So it's not just the railways doing this alone, it's a joint team to make sure everything is accurate. And it all leads to a formal signed joint report.
And look, this survey is not just about drawing a few lines on a map. These surveyors are recording everything of value on that land. We're talking every single tree, every well, what crops are growing, and of course, any houses or buildings. Now, why is this so detailed? Because every single item on this list directly impacts the final compensation amount. For the landowner, the accuracy of this survey is absolutely critical.
All right, so the survey is done, the report is in. Now the process enters a very formal and very time-sensitive phase. This is the moment the government officially tells landowners what's happening and gives them a specific, limited time to respond. This is your window to act.
This official notice is called a Section 20A notification. It gets published in government records and in local newspapers. Now, the most important word to focus on here is intent. This is not the final nail in the coffin. It's the government basically raising its hand and saying, hey everyone, just so you know, we intend to acquire this specific piece of land.
And the moment that notification goes public, a 30-day clock officially starts ticking. This is the one and only window for a landowner to file any objections they have with that competent authority we talked about. And you're not just sending a letter into the dark. The law says the competent authority has to give you a personal hearing to listen to your case.
So what can you actually object to? Well, the law is pretty clear on this. You can't just say, nope, I don't feel like giving up my land. The objections have to be based on facts. For instance, you could argue that the survey number they listed for your land is wrong. Or maybe there's a family dispute over who even owns the land. You could even argue that there's another piece of land nearby that would work just as well for the railway line.
Okay, so the 30-day objection period is over, all the hearings have happened. Now, if the government overrules those objections, the process moves to its most serious and final stage. This is what we call the point of no return.
This is the Section 20E declaration. And unlike the 20A notice, which was just an intent, this one is a final declaration. It is the official, legally binding statement that the land is now being taken for the project.
You can think of it as the final signature on a contract that you just can't back out of.
And here is the absolute crucial point. The moment this 20E declaration is published, the legal status of that land changes forever. Any and all previous ownership rights are just gone, extinguished. In the eyes of the law, the land no longer belongs to the individual. It now belongs absolutely to the central government.
Of course, the government can't just take the land and walk away. Now that the ownership is legally transferred, we get to the final phase, figuring out and paying the fair compensation, and then finally taking physical control of the property.
Your compensation isn't just one single number. It's actually a package made of different parts. First, you get the market value of the land itself. Then, you get paid for the value of all those assets from the survey, the trees, the buildings, everything. And on top of all that, there's a really important component called solatium. This is basically a legally required extra payment to compensate you for the fact that this sale wasn't your choice.
So once that final award amount is paid out, the railways can then take physical possession of the land. A formal document is signed, and the last administrative step, called mutation, takes place. That's just the fancy term for when the local land records are officially updated to show the central government as the new owner, which closes the loop on the entire process.
But does this whole process have to be a big fight? Well, not always. Check this out. In a freight corridor project in Gujarat, they tried something different. They started talking to the community really early, explaining the project and listening to concerns before any official notices went out. And the result? They managed to reduce the number of official objections by a staggering 70%. It made the whole thing faster and way smoother for everybody. So the land is acquired, the tracks are laid down, end of story, right? Well, not quite. What happens if plans change? What if the railways acquired a piece of land, but then never actually used it? The answer to that question reveals another really important detail. And here we see another huge difference between the two laws. Under the General 2013 law, if the government takes land and doesn't use it within 5 years, it has to be returned to the original owners. But the Railways Act? It's completely different. There is no rule like that. Land taken by the railways can be held forever or even be used for something else, like a commercial project. Just let that sink in for a moment. Under the Railways Act, once your land is acquired, it does not go back. Period. This finality is a core part of the law. It gives the government total certainty for its long-term plans. But it's a world away from how the general land acquisition law in the country works.
And that really leaves us with one last big question. This entire process that we've just walked through, it's all designed for one thing: speed. It's built to push forward projects that are seen as vital for the country. But does this special fast-track system strike the right balance? The balance between that undeniable need for progress and the equally undeniable rights of the individual landowner? That's the core question at the heart of it all.